you're getting out. Mama. Good morning. Welcome to my beautiful unschool life. My name is Erin, and I am telling the story of building Erin's tiny homestead here on Dawn's 2-acre property. We have almost caught up to the present, so I don't know what to say. Isn't it pretty? I'm just distracted by how pretty it is behind me. The last episode left off at the beginning of this year, at the beginning of 2024. I finished off with Christmas. And so 2024 has been my first full year working on this farm. Last year I didn't move here until the 19th of May. So I really felt like I was just playing catch up the whole year. But this year I got to sort of strategize and I got to put the plan into place. So that was a really exciting change. Now, winter is always a bit of a time of rest. There's a lot more time spent with my kids. We go skating, we do a lot of reading and cuddling, and we sit by the fire and we play games. There's still work to do in the winter. Dawn and I both heat our houses with wood, so we do a lot of going to the forest and harvesting wood. The garden season comes around quickly, so in the winter I have to spend time saving seeds, planning next year's garden, ordering seeds from the seed catalogs. So Don and his buddy Lance have been working on my greenhouse. It is the 1st of March, and that's what they did in just, a couple of days of thinking about it and buying materials and so on and so forth. Eventually it would be ideal if this ended up spanning the whole length of the house. But for now, this is big enough for what I need. Hi, Basil. You're like, stop talking and pour me some water. And once springtime comes, of course, the main thing around here is babies. And because this was our first year really settled, we really let the animals do what they wanted as far as breeding goes. So we had baby chicks from multiple mamas. We had baby ducks from one of my mamas, and we had baby rabbits in multiple litters. So this video is gonna have a lot of cute footage of baby animals. You're doing such a good job, Mama. Count it. 4, 8. She's gonna be a mom in about a week. There's one down here. Hi, cuties. Hi. They look so cute.
Yeah, we haven't had baby ducks for so long. I swear.
So the chickens made a right mess of my garden. These rows were all beautifully heaped and mulched for the winter. And all winter the chickens have been coming in here and just kicking all the mulch off so that they could eat the bugs out of the rows, which in theory I don't mind. I'm glad they're eating the bugs, but it means now I have a big job. Now I am raking the mulch back out of the pathways onto the mounds again and putting in... What is that? So Dawn has rigged up a hose all the way from the duck pond with a pump and a whole bunch of reducers and so on and so forth. And the hose runs into my garden. So we're trying it for the first time to see what happens when we try to pump the duck pool. Yeah, I'm ready! Directly into the garden. Nothing's happening! Is there a kink? Here it comes! It's a fountain of duck poo. This is the before. Things are about to change. I am getting a new garden. I am pretty darn excited about it because I didn't really think I would get another garden. And I was prepared to make do with what I had. And now here it comes. Another 20 feet by 50 feet, which is fantastic. With this garden, we did the same as the last garden. We added 2 dump trailers full of aged cow manure. We tilled it in and we raked it into rows. This year I also made the decision to do the farmer's market. In the past, I sold seedlings just at the side of the road, but this year I decided to go a little bit bigger and to have a booth at the local farmer's market. And next week's episode will be all about that. Will be all about the farmer's market. I am planting in my very own greenhouse for the very first time. Although I kind of forgot, I didn't think to film it, and the sun is going down, so I'm probably going to pack it in soon. But I'm doing something a little different this year that I've never even thought about trying before, and I don't know what the right way to do it is, and I'm full of self-doubt. I'm trying something different. So I'm making collections. These trays have packs of 6. So I'm putting 2 different plants, 2 plants of 3 different varieties. So these are my pepper collections. I don't know if those are the best way to do it. Maybe I should do one that's just really, really like all the hottest peppers I have. Actually, that's a good idea. But I also don't know how many sales I'm gonna have. I don't know what it's gonna be like. I've never worked the market before. I have no idea. So I might be downplaying how much stuff I'm gonna sell. It's got to be worth it to them if they do it every year, right? So I might be completely unprepared. That's possible. Fingers crossed. So while it was really exciting to be on this farm for my first full year, it was also a really hard year. We had a very mild winter, which meant that there was not a hard freeze, which meant that the pests in the garden were really, really bad this year. It is June 1st, and I am already picking squash bugs off of squash that haven't even been planted in the ground yet. And I have really terrible damage from cucumber beetles from plants that I've been in the greenhouse. So it's August 22nd. I'm in my new garden that I just built this year, and this garden is breaking my heart. It's just been, well, let me show you. For starters, the bindweed is just everywhere. I've been pulling bindweed out of this garden all summer, and it just comes back, and again and again and again, and it comes back so quickly that it's really impossible. Bindweed is something that everybody agrees is the biggest pain in the butt in the garden for exactly that reason. Like, it even took down this zinnia and broke it. It's just everywhere. Bindweed everywhere, 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 everywhere. The other thing that's killing this garden is the vine borers killed all of my cucumbers and all of my squash and all of my melons. And what the vine borers started, the squash bugs finished. And it looks like a graveyard. This was my best chance in 5 years of gardening. This was my best chance of tasting a Kajari melon. And it's just been absolutely destroyed. People will say that the trick to squash bugs is to move your squash every year so that they're in a different location. I have never found that to be true. I have always had a hard time with squash bugs, even if it's a brand new garden where no one has ever gardened. Well, last year, this was the first time there was a garden here in years, and the nearest garden is down the road. And I still had squash bugs everywhere, so that's a myth. I don't buy it. This is it. Out of, I think I had 24 squash and melon plants. This is the entire harvest that I got. Not a single one of them is edible. There's a few that I harvested a bit earlier this year, and none of them were edible either. The chickens are really excited though. My cucuzzi, however, are once again the pride of the garden. I love this thing. No matter how many things fail, when the cucuzzi grows, there's no stopping it. They're all planted on that side over there. They go up over this arch, which is, probably 7 feet tall. They come down the other side. And then this one here is going across, up the cucumber vine, over the cucumber vine, and on its way to the sweet potatoes. So, cucuzzi for the win. And we also had a real problem with predators this year. So the first attack happened when my bunnies gave birth. When I checked on Friday night, there were 6 babies in the nest. And when I came out on Saturday morning, I was in the chicken run and I looked up, and running across the grass was one of the mama rabbits. So I knew that was not a good sign. And she led me straight back to the cage. I didn't have to chase her or catch her. She took me to the cage. And when I looked in, there were only 4 babies inside. Now, later that day, there were 6 babies again. So I think she must have been in the middle of giving birth when they were attacked. We don't know who attacked them. When I came out, the lid of the cage was open, and two of the cats were standing right next to the cage. Now these cages, this is the latch, and it's not particularly easy to open. My kids struggle with it. So we think that if a cat was persistent enough, they probably could get it open. But either way, we had to do something. So that was when we started weighing the lids down. We started putting big pieces of 4x4 on the lids so that they were harder to open. It also meant that the kids had a harder time opening it. So that was a bit frustrating because it's their chore. But we managed to make it work. Of those 6 babies, 2 of them, it turned out, had been severely injured as they got... It's so loud around here. As the babies got older and they started to walk, we noticed that 2 of them were paralyzed from the waist down and couldn't walk. So we had to put them out of their misery, which was a really hard thing to do. We've never had to euthanize baby rabbits before, so that was pretty heart-crushing. And people often ask me about the division of labor around here because it's called Erin's Tiny Homestead, but it's on Don's property. He did the euthanizing of the baby rabbits. I gotta give him credit for that. I'm a bit of a coward, and I'm happy to let him do the hard jobs. So that attack on the rabbits was not the last attack. A few weeks later, one of the young rabbits had a huge bite out of his ear. So we think something must have been on the outside of the cage, nibbling at his ear. And then one day, Don came out to the run in the middle of the afternoon and found one of our young ducks with his neck broken on the ground. Don immediately came and got me, and I came out and had a look, and it turned out that 3 other ducks were missing, in addition to the one with the broken neck. So we had to euthanize that poor little guy with the broken neck. And we realized that we had a serious predator problem. So because the attack had happened in broad daylight, right in the chicken run, we assumed that the most likely culprit was a hawk. So what I did was I strung these strings all across the top of the chicken run. Our chicken run is too big to run fence across the top, and I don't have a budget to run fence across the top, so this was the best solution that I could come up with. So I ran these strings all across the top of the chicken run, and then the next morning when I came out, one of my adult ducks was gone. There was a hole in the fence and a fluff of feathers on the ground, and we found her carcass around the back underneath an old shed. So an animal being taken at night like that, and it wasn't a fox, because a fox would take it away to eat it. It had to be something small and something agile that could rip a hole in the fence. We figured it must be raccoons. Now raccoons won't usually kill chickens. They'll usually just steal the eggs and leave it at that. But if a mama raccoon is teaching her babies how to hunt, chickens and ducks are a really nice, easy beginner's target. The strings weren't going to work. We decided to put up an electric fence. Now, electric fences are very expensive. I think we spent $300, over $300 on electric fences, which is a lot for me because I'm on a fixed income. But the plan was eventually we want to rotational graze our meat chickens, and we were in the process of building a chicken tractor. So I'm going to need an electric fence eventually anyways. I just bit the bullet. We bought the electric fence and we put it around the chicken run, and we didn't have any more attacks for the rest of the summer. But it meant that I couldn't free range my chickens, and I love free ranging my chickens. Nothing makes me happier than watching my chickens and my ducks running around on the grass all over the property. So that was a really heartbreaking thing. And I even had So I started selling my extra eggs to a few different people in town. And one of the people who was getting my eggs said, "Have you done something different? Because the eggs don't taste the same." So they actually did notice that I wasn't free ranging my chickens anymore. If you're ever wondering, it's true, they can tell the difference. So we did have some problems with failure to thrive with the baby rabbits. I found the mama wasn't spending enough time in there with the babies, and some of the babies were bigger and some of them were smaller, and the bigger ones were stealing all the food. So we started giving her greens in the nesting box to encourage her to feed the babies. And then eventually when they were 4 weeks old, we took the bigger ones out. Normally I leave the babies in with the mamas until they're at least 2 months old, but because I was worried about the little ones, I took the bigger ones out. And it worked out just fine. Everybody did fine after I did that. There are 2 other tragedies that happened on the farm this year. One was our cat Moon went missing. Emma went missing too, but the neighbors found her because Emma has some survival skills.
If you fall it out to
Moon is a very sweet cat, but she wasn't particularly smart. So we assume that she probably got eaten by coyotes. We also lost our darling little Scissorbeak. So I talked about Scissor's sister, how she had such a sweet personality, and she and Abby really bonded. We had hoped to keep her, but she couldn't eat enough food to build up any sort of reserves. And when the winter came, she couldn't handle the cold. I know we could have babied her. We could have brought her inside. We could have done things to protect her from the cold. But I just don't have the bandwidth for that sort of thing. I can't. At this point in my life, I am just struggling to keep on top of the work that I already have. So having high maintenance animals that need to be pampered just isn't something I can do right now. I really, really hope that I can do better at that later, as I get my feet under me and don't feel like I'm in survival mode all the time. It's a hard thing when you're taking care of animals because they're my responsibility. If they get attacked by a predator, that's my fault, you know. And the thing is, like with the ducks in particular, the plan is to eat the ducks. So you'd think I wouldn't be so upset when something else eats them, but I am, because that's a terrifying way for them to die, to get pulled through the fence and pulled apart by a family of raccoons. That's horrifying. They're my responsibility. They're trapped in that fence because I put them in that fence, and it's my job to protect them. So when a predator comes along and starts attacking my animals, I'm not okay with that. It's not okay. And it really shook me because I've never had problems with predators before. So it really shook me that I was failing in my responsibility to these animals. So it made it a really hard year. But there were lots of really sweet babies to make up for all the difficult things. And I would sort of say that's the number one thing about farming that I think people need to understand, how it's such an emotional roller coaster. You know, there's so much life and so much death. And I think so much of our world is pretending that death doesn't exist. And if you don't see the cycle of life and death, it's hard to appreciate.
Remember you and I would always find somewhere to hide when we were kids, so we could see and hear the water run.
Was that necessary?
River's gonna cry when you're gone.
Right in my ear.
Where will you go? Won't you miss the ones you know? I'll be here, hanging on, waiting for your call. Seems like time as a wave passing by, leave a mark in our minds to turn to memories. River's gonna cry when you're gone, 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 gone. River's gonna cry when you're gone, 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 gone. River's gonna cry when you're gone, 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 gone. River's gonna cry when you're. River's gonna cry when you're. River's gonna cry when you're gone.
I am absolutely adoring watching these babies being raised by their mamas. When we were over across the road, Laura had a hen hatch out 13 chicks. And she thought the safest place for them would be in the garden with my chickens in their big enclosure. And about a week in, my chickens started murdering the babies. They killed one, they maimed another one, and they attacked a third, which survived. So we ended up having to move the chickens somewhere else. And so when these silkies were getting broody, I was really nervous that we would have a repeat of that incident. But it hasn't been like that at all. These mamas have done such a great job raising these babies, and the rest of the chickens have accepted them into the flock. I think because they know the moms. That mom that was put in there with those 13 babies, she was a total stranger. The babies were obviously did not belong to my rooster. And there were 13 of them. One mama to protect 13 babies from a flock that she was not familiar with. So of course they didn't survive. But these ones here, they're just right at home. It's been really sweet. I've really loved it. So part of what's cool is that each of the three mamas has picked her chicks. So this littlest one here, this is Chocolate Chip, and this is his mama. And the white one, she's got 3, and the other gray one has 2. So they each have their own mama that they sleep with at night, and the mama makes sure that her babies gets fed. And sometimes they scold the other babies when they get in the way of their own baby having food.
Mama, I kind of want to jump on there and hold on from there.
So Don has a friend who has a pretty big beef operation, and he had a whole bunch of straw bales that split open, and they were no good to him, and he knows how much I like straw, so he offered it to Don for me to use in my garden. So we have a very big pile of straw that we just unloaded from the dump trailer. The dump trailer doesn't currently dump, so we had to pitchfork it out, and we're gonna put it completely all over the garden because there's enough of it that we should be able to cover everything, and that will hopefully smother out some of the weeds and give me some nutrients. And he's also teaching Bethany how to drive the tractor, and Abby is obviously in the back having a ride. You look like an animal at the zoo. So I also never filmed my finished greenhouse. When I filmed it in the spring, it was just the framework, and we hadn't put the plastic on yet or the roof on yet. So I did not do very much of the work for this. The boys built all the framing. I was on the roof for a little bit, and I put the plastic on, and that's it. So it's a really different experience having done all the designing and planning and building of this house and none of the designing and building and planning of my greenhouse, because that was a lot of work, but it also comes with a lot of pride. This was no work at all, and oh, isn't it a lovely gift to not have to do all the work for something? So, you know, it's a different experience. So what we did inside was we have this big IBC tote, and I painted it black so that it will attract the sun. And we filled it with water, and when it's warm in here, that water heats up and it holds the temperature during the night a little bit. Now, it'll work better when I put this wall back on. When we had the high heat of the summer, it was just unbearable in here, and this opens into my house. The original plan was that because I have the great big wood stove in the house, that the house would heat the greenhouse. But of course, heat rises. The house is on wheels, so the greenhouse is lower than the house. So it means that actually the greenhouse is heating my house instead of the house heating my greenhouse. So as soon as the warm weather came and I planted the garden and I wasn't using the greenhouse for plants anymore, it was necessary to remove this wall. And it means that it's now just sort of a sheltered porch, and I'm using it for drying seeds, for drying onions, for drying the tobacco. So it's still a useful space. The kids can leave all their slime mess all over the place without getting rained on. So this wall's going to be going back on any day now whenever I find time. But all in all, I'm extremely happy with the greenhouse. The question is, will we expand it or not? And I'm not sure. I would like a bigger greenhouse, but I'm not sure if having the greenhouse attached to my house is the best idea, because my house is already too hard to regulate the temperature. And I think having the greenhouse covering those big doors would really cause troubles for me. So we might have to move to plan B with the greenhouse. I don't know what plan B is, but I'm sure I can come up with a good one. Anyways, I think that's all the filming I'm going to do for today. The next episode will be about the farmer's market. And then after that, we're caught up to the present. So it's a whole new world. Thanks for hanging out with me, everybody. I look forward to talking to you next time. Take care. Here's a great example of why chickens should never be set free. Because this chicken over here has somehow got herself hanging upside down from the fence. Oh, honey. Oh, honey. Sweetheart, let me get you untangled. Give me a second. Are you okay, honey? That was humiliating, wasn't it? Poor thing.